My name is Lindsay, and I'm a PhD student in the Department of Linguistics. I'm going to facilitate the town hall as we go through. Here's a look at our program. We're going to go over the history of United Grad Workers, our group, and our organization efforts. Emma's going to give us that overview about how the group started and how we picked UE to organize with. Alana's going to go over some recent successes that we've had, if you haven't already seen on social media and in the press, and show us some pictures from our last event. And then Len's going to go over our current legal status and what that situation is with the labor board and the admin. And then Joe is going to talk to us about the issues and introduce our bargaining survey that just launched today. And then Axel is going to tell us more about the structure of our organization going forward and how everyone can get more involved in what we're doing here. And that will be followed by a Q&A breakout session at the end. So again, you can drop your questions in the chat or save them until the breakout sessions and ask them there. And there is a link to sign in now in the chat for everyone who just joined and hasn't seen it yet. And again, thanks everyone for coming. So first we're going to hear from Emma about the history of United Grad Workers.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to go over a little bit of how we got started and what we've been doing lately. We did start with a few TAs in the English department in 2016. We learned that it only takes 2 or more people to change your workplace with direct action, a value from the IWW. So we started changing some small things. For example, 2 people stood up during one of our trainings and demanded that we be paid for something the department used hours of unpaid graduate student labor for each year. Even though we were originally told that wasn't possible, a few months later, we were all getting paid $25 an hour for participating in this. We eventually became a group of about 30 people from a few different departments. During this time, we learned that we were not only graduate workers, we were not the only graduate workers being taken advantage of. So we learned that this is pretty pervasive across the university, not just in the English department. We also learned that we are treated much more as workers than we are as students in our departments. And we learned that we have the power to change things when we come together and use our voice collectively. As a group, we decided to reach out to UE in the fall of 2019. Mark came to Albuquerque to meet us in February of 2020, so it's been about a year, to let us know what steps we would need to take to work with UE. And UE's democratic structure really appealed to our group. It fit with our values. It's a rank and file union model, and it also has a really awesome history working with graduate unions, and we knew that they would be able to help us organize a contract. About 10 folks met with Mark early last year to see what we needed to do. And then the pandemic hit, so things slowed down for a month or two. But the organizers worked hard over the summer, getting town halls together, educating other graduate workers, researching next steps for what we would need to keep doing to keep growing the union. And with a growing organizing committee, we met our goal of starting the card drive last fall in September, despite the pandemic. You guys probably remember that. And by that point, we had between 60 to 100 people who were involved in our organizing committee. Within 3 months, we had a majority of students at UNM signed up. So grad workers who are Ts, RAs, or GAs, most of them have signed a union card at this point. Now we have a supermajority of around 1,000 members, and we are signing up more people all the time. I definitely think we're going to win this. So thanks for being here to learn about our next step.
Thanks so much, Emma. And now we are going to hear from Alana about our recent successes.
Hi everyone, my name is Alana. I'm in the American Studies department, a fourth year PhD. So we've had some really cool things that have happened recently that I'm sure if you all follow us on social media, you've heard about. But I kind of wanted to share the kind of, if you haven't heard about it, what has been going on. So on January 27th, we held a car caravan in protest at UNM. Approximately 150 people attended either on foot or in their cars, which was a really amazing thing considering that we're in a global pandemic, right? And people were really busy. It's the beginning of the semester. And things are hectic. It was on a Wednesday, so we had a lot of amazing grad workers and community members come out to support us. Specifically, we were protesting UNM's petition that argued that graduate workers are not employees, which we know is total BS, right? So Lindsay, if you could click through the photos. So we got a lot of really great turnout, right? We had folks standing outside on foot in front of the president's house, which is near Zimmerman Library, as you see here in these photos. And we also had people meet up in a parking lot. There's a really awesome picture of Kelsey taken by another graduate student. And we drove around the loop around campus, and here you can see all these cars came out for the car caravan. So it was really awesome. And we gave speeches at both the car caravan and at the on foot protest in front of the president's house on campus. This was also covered in the press. The Daily Logo actually came out and covered it on Twitter. They also had this really great article. The paper, a local news source, also covered the event. And also, if you didn't see it, the Daily Logo actually had us on the front page for their first print edition of the semester, which is really awesome. And you can find links to all of these on our social media in our bios. So if you're interested in reading them, you can read them there. Can you go to the next slide, Lindsay? So I just want to show you all really quickly, the Daily Logo actually put together a really awesome video of the protest.
The base minimum pay for TAs, GAs, RAs is about $6,000 below the living wage for Albuquerque for a single adult. So that's not to mention people who have family or child to support and things like that. And a lot of us are overworked and are working hours that we're not getting paid to work.
So UNM is saying that we're not workers. We don't perform labor for the university. Our relationship is not economic. It's an educational relationship. Hey, hey! Hey, hey! Hey, hey! Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
If the university does not stop stalling and allows us our right to unionize, and we will be forced to strike. And we really do hope it doesn't.
So the first one here.
So besides the action that occurred last month, which you saw in that video, we also put out a petition specifically to President Stokes and other admin at the university who claim that we're not employees, to demand our rights to unionize and bargain in good faith with our employers. And so far we have, as of yesterday, over 2,000 petition signers, both locally and globally. If you can go to the next slide, Lindsay. And so we've gotten really amazing solidarity and support from the local community as well as the national community, either by sharing and signing our petition or sharing the car caravan. And many of these people or representatives from these groups showed up to our car caravan as well. I can't read them all, and this is not comprehensive, but we had a lot of folks from the UNM Student Caucus, which includes a bunch of groups on campus like UNM Leaf, UNM Dream Team, Kiva Club, as well as local groups like Fight for Our Lives Albuquerque, the IWW of Albuquerque, Albuquerque DSA, as well as national groups like the Sunrise Movement, the Democratic Socialists of America, and Ceding Sovereignty shared our events and our petitions on social media. And we also got a lot of support from both local unions and unions across the US, both graduate student unions and other kinds of unions. So we've gotten a lot of support, and it's been really great to see as part of our local success, or recent success, is just building that community and that solidarity with other people. But yeah, that's all I have so far. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Alana, for taking us through that and sharing our recent successes with us. So now Len is going to take over and go over our current legal status.
All right, so what's the situation? As you all know, last semester we collected all of the signatures. We have about 1,000 people signed up, which is more than 60% of our bargaining unit, and we sent all of that to the State Labor Board on December 9th. The State Labor Board basically sent a message to UNM saying, this looks prima facie correct, and these people should be allowed to unionize, and you should sit down with them and talk with them. However, the university did not agree, and they instead argued in bad faith that we are not workers with them. So they filed a petition claiming that we are not regular employees. They cite a proposed ruling from Trump's National Labor Board to sort of support that. They also claim that we do not have a community of interest. And in the past, they have argued that graduate workers are compensated fairly if you take into account tuition waivers. On February the 1st, there was sort of a pre-hearing hearing, and UNM convinced the State Labor Board to give them the opportunity to make a motion for summary dismissal of our petition based on that argument that we're not workers. They have until the 19th of this month to file that motion. We then have until the 1st of March to respond. And then unless our petition is dismissed, which is unlikely, there will be a hearing for evidence between March 30th and April 1st. If we can have the next slide, Lindsay, thank you. All right, so what are the university's arguments, legal arguments, and what are our counters? So university's first argument is that the National Labor Board has this rule for private institutions and it should apply to us. The rule says that our relationship to the university as graduate workers is primarily educational and not economic, and therefore we do not have collective bargaining rights. However, that rule never went into effect. It was only supposed to apply to private institutions, in which we are not, and therefore this labor board, the National Labor Board, doesn't make any decisions about us, and there's no reason why their rules should apply to us in the first place, even if it had gone into effect. The second one, they argue that we are not regular employees, right? They define regular as having employment for an indefinite period of time. However, that definition is completely internal to UNM, and there is no legal precedent in the state or nationally for that definition of regular. On the contrary, there are many public employees that are unionized, that have union contracts, including all public school teachers, that would fall under a definition of non-regular employees, because they sign contracts that are for a year or for a couple of years and not for an indeterminate duration. Next argument is we do not have a shared community of interest, but we do. We all work for the same employer, UNM. We all work for the same purpose, to support ourselves while we pursue graduate degrees. We regularly interact with each other. We are all assistants, which is a specific occupational category under labor law. So yes, we do have a community of interest. And then sort of this previous argument that they're not making to the labor board, but they've made it to us, basically to convince us not to unionize, which is that if you count tuition waiver, we actually get a decent wage. But they actually don't count tuition waivers, because if they did, the PhD students who've completed coursework would get what would earlier in their sort of program have been tuition waivers that would be added on to the stipend, and it isn't. So they're not counting it like that, even though they tell us to count it like that. The next slide, please, Lindsay. So what does that all amount to? This amounts to the university is stalling, right? They're making all of these arguments that are standard arguments. They've been used in a number of previous cases. All public graduate student unions have been able to defeat these arguments. And they have never, like none of the universities that have tried these arguments have won their cases. UNM is convincing the labor board to have that sort of reprieve period to make their motion and for us to respond is also a stalling tactic. Next slide, please. But if they're stalling, you know, we can use that time too. We can use that time to get stronger, to get our organization to be more robust, and to basically get ready to negotiate when the labor board rules in our favor. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Len, for taking us through that situation. And now we're ready to pass it off to Axel, who is going to tell us, no, Joe, sorry. Joe's up talking to us about getting back to the issues, and he is going to introduce our bargaining survey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Yukokis from the history department, third year PhD student. Just to echo what Len was saying, UNM is doing all that they can to stall the bargaining process, and it's probably feeling pretty frustrating and demoralizing. However, this is far from over. We can't lose sight of the issues that brought us together in the first place, the issues that inherently make us a community of interest. Grad workers in different departments have different experiences with subpar working conditions and compensation, But in the end, it's all tied to our lack of voice when it comes to our contracts. Unsurprisingly, one of our top issues is compensation. For a 0.5 FTE, so 20 hours a week, the minimum stipend is $14,225, which is 61% of what's considered a living wage in Albuquerque, which is an estimated $23,213. And that's just for one adult. The bottom line is that the cost of living. Since 2015, cost of living has increased by 10.5%, while the TAGA minimum stipends have increased by 1%, $141, I think, since 2015. I think probably econ students could probably speak better to this, but it's hard not to see this as a problem that's not just going to worsen exponentially. So we need to take a stand now. Slide. So then we have the issue of insurance and benefits. We all know that our copays and our out-of-pocket maximums are way too high. But here's a reminder of those numbers. You want to add one dependent, subtract about $4,000 from your $14,000 stipend. Then as you can see in this testimony, this especially hurts international students. To maintain their visa status, dependents of international students need to have health insurance. However, adding my spouse and my child to my UNM provided insurance costs more than $6,000 a year, which is about 30% of my annual income. External insurance options offer cheaper coverage, but they have many limitations. Once I was surprised with a $280 bill for a routine visit to a pediatrician. As an international student, I am not allowed to work more hours. My spouse cannot work, and I come from a country where $6,000 a year is almost twice the minimum annual salary. Students need to be able to add their dependents to their health insurance at no or minimum cost. I think that's really well said. So if you're comfortable with sharing, can you put a thumbs up if you've ever delayed care or ignored a medical dental issue while employed as a grad worker? Yeah, it seems like a pretty common experience. It's just like absolutely unacceptable. I'm currently ignoring dental pain. I think many people have pretty bad horror stories about that. And then, so those in the audience with glasses, can you put in the chat how old your current pair is? So I think you're supposed to replace the prescription in your glasses every 2 years. So I've lost track of how long I've had these. But so I haven't had to repair these yet, but the past couple frames I've had, I just keep having to buy cheap frames and they just break apart on my face. I have to super glue them together. Yeah, fun times. Yeah, like last session, it was people had way more than 2 years in terms of their glasses. It's pretty terrible. Next slide. So a problem that affects a lot of grad workers is a lack of affordable childcare. This is part of a larger pattern of discrimination against those raising families while in academia, especially mothers. Last month, the New Mexico Early Childhood Education and Care Department expanded their eligibility for childcare assistance to UNM grad workers, which significantly cut the cost. As you can see, the person quoted in this article used to pay almost $600 a month, and you already know how little we make. While this has undoubtedly provided relief to struggling grad workers, the person quoted in this article makes a really good point. Many of us are at a point where we have to seek state assistance to get by. And in terms of childcare, it took until last month to even get that. Slide. And then, of course, our international colleagues have some unique struggles. When it comes to housing, international grad workers have limited options with their restricted work hours, like you saw earlier. Last summer, UNM announced that they will be demolishing student family housing after the end of this semester, which will have a disproportionate impact on international grad workers' living options. That means that the stress of relocation is going to come right as the semester is coming to a close, which is the most stressful time of the semester for anybody normally. This shows that the university can just decide to kick us out of our homes with no recourse. We have no say in this. Without a voice, the university can always put its interest above that of its students. In the workplace, international students' recourse for exploitation and abuse is pretty limited. There are several factors that ensure that international students can keep their visas, and one of them is continued employment, meaning that if they're dismissed from their assistantships, they may lose their legal residency and maybe even have to delay or give up on their degrees. Without an adequate grievance procedure, they're all the more precarious. Domestic students need to stand in solidarity with international students, and unionizing is the way. Next slide. All right, so folks could put a thumbs up if you regularly work more hours than you have on your contract. It's, yeah, judging by, yep. It seems like this is pretty much the norm, the status quo at UNM. Pretty easy way to get free labor out of us. Yeah, so also if you're comfortable sharing, put a thumbs up if you've experienced some form of harassment or discrimination in your department. Yeah, it's unacceptable. This is a big reason why people who aren't white men are so underrepresented in academia. So there are a few options when this kind of thing happens. For overwork or discrimination or harassment, you could go to your department chair. That's always what I've been told. But many departments have proven to be super protective of their faculty and the overall status quo. You could also be working for the department head. You can go through the Office of Equal Opportunity for instances of discrimination and harassment, theoretically, but we don't have a say in that process after the complaint is filed. And then you'll notice that we don't have an official channel like the Office of Equal Opportunity to report overwork. With a union, we can implement our own grievance procedure that addresses all of these issues that I've named. This is a big part of claiming a voice in how our workplaces are governed. Next slide. And of course, we've got COVID. Last spring, many grad workers were tasked with converting in-person classes to online, having to learn the various technological tools on the spot. It was a lot of labor, not to mention the extra stress and emotional hardship of the pandemic. Some of you might remember that petition that a sizable group of grad students put together last summer, asking UNM for extensions for funding, healthcare, and time to degree limits, as well as emergency summer funding. The petition got a dismissive response from administration, effectively shifting the burden of relief for grad workers onto departments. Why was admin able to do this? Well, there's no structure or institution that ensures that our grievances are heard. There's nothing stopping them from outright ignoring us. Nothing short of unionizing. If you want to switch slide, Lindsay. This leads us into our bargaining survey. Our goal is to go to the bargaining table with UNM this semester, and to do so, we're going to need to have an idea of what our bargaining unit actually wants. As I've mentioned, our issues can vary from department to department, so we want to make sure that our demands are best representing everyone's interests. Your response will both help shape our platform and also serve as some hard data to take to UNM. If we can show them that an overwhelming amount of grad workers are unsatisfied with their stipends, for instance, we can get more leverage. The survey should take about 15-20 minutes to complete, depending on how detailed your answers are. We'd like folks to fill it out by March 12th, so a month from now. And it looks like we've already got 17 responses since we've launched it this morning. So go ahead and join your colleagues in doing so. So the first section is your basic info about you, your program, your current assistantship, expected funding status for fall 2021, if you have that info. The second section is about your priorities when it comes to issues. As you can see, there's a scale of 1 to 8 with the various issues I've mentioned. Make sure you're only marking one issue for your first priority. Make sure you're only marking one for your first priority and so on. So one response per column. Slide. So next, you'll be going through each issue and answering more detailed questions about that issue. There will be ranking with some sub-issues like higher stipends or summer funding under wages. You'll also have opportunities to share specific grievances if you choose. This is information that will help us qualitatively assess the various problems that we face and build a contract accordingly. Finally, we have some ways to get involved. It's more important than ever to build our movement as we're getting ready to go to the bargaining table. And the best way to do that is to have everyone pitch in some capacity. So Axel is going to go into detail with these in a moment, but note that under the steward section, you can nominate yourself or colleagues to keep that in mind as you learn more about that position. So I'll hand it off to Axel.
Thanks so much, Joe, for sharing all that info with us and talking us through our bargaining survey. The link to the bargaining survey is in the chat now. So hopefully all of you will take 15 to 20 minutes to fill that out. And with that, we will hand it over to Axel, who is going to tell us more about how to get involved.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Joe, everyone else who's spoken, and everyone who's here. So as others have kind of alluded to already, We certainly all wish like we could have, got into the bargaining table already this month with UNM. And it's a little frustrating, right, that UNM is kind of stalling the process. But again, as Len mentioned, right, we're really confident in our case. We're confident the board's going to rule in our favor, and we're going to get to bargaining after that hearing. So while we're frustrated we can't get there earlier, this actually gives us an opportunity to really build our organization, build our structure, make sure we have a strong, active union that's ready to bargain for the best contract possible. What's going to get us the best contract possible is having a lot of people involved, right? A lot of members involved. Folks are engaged so that UNM knows this isn't a small group of people that want these changes, right? Over 1,000 graduate workers have joined the union already. And now we get an opportunity to really focus on our structure to make sure that everyone has a voice, right? And everyone's involved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, kind of how we're thinking of kind of organizing ourselves to prepare for the contract fight and contract negotiations, right? And how you can get involved. Again, our view is that, I know I've said this already, but what's gonna get us the strongest contract possible is if there's a lot of us contributing what we can, right? Not just a few of us doing everything, right? So it's not about working, putting 20 hours a week into the union or anything. It's about contributing what you can so that we can have a strong, active union, and we can win the best contract possible. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Let's see if I can. All right, yeah, it's working. So I have a little graphic here. It's gonna kind of help us understand like our structure. And I'm actually gonna start from the bottom here. So this is our bargaining committee. We're gonna elect our bargaining committee in the coming weeks, right? And as the legal situation gets figured out. And this is going to be a bargaining committee. The bargaining committee is going to be the folks who are actually at the table with UNM, right? So they're going to be the ones who are sitting down with UNM and negotiating and presenting proposals, right? Of course, these proposals are going to be drafted with everyone's input, the entire membership's input. That's what the bargaining survey is for. That's why it's important that we encourage our colleagues to fill out the bargaining survey. That's how they're going to exercise their voice. And the bargaining committee is going to be in constant communication with the rest of the membership, right, on how things are going, right, new proposals to bring up and matters as such. What's important to know is that once there's a tentative agreement, right, once the bargaining committee comes to a tentative agreement with UNM, all of us will vote on that contract, right? It's not the bargaining committee kind of doing everything for us, right? We're all involved in the process. And any contract that's, again, once a tentative agreement is come to, we'll all get a chance to vote on that contract. And the contract will only go through if we vote to approve it. So everyone's going to have a voice. Of course, that bargaining committee is going to be representative of the whole university, right? Both in terms of race and gender, but also in terms of departments, right? STEM representation. I will make sure to have international student representatives on the committee. And yeah, it'll include folks from everywhere. So of course, at the top here is our membership, right? These are the over 1,000 graduate workers who have joined the union. And in the middle here is the kind of crux of our organization, which is our organizing committee and our interim stewards. I'm going to talk about interim stewards in a moment, but essentially stewards and organizing committee members are us, right? The ones who are going to kind of, activate the membership in the process, right? Let them know about what's going on, answer their questions, make sure that their voices are being heard, getting them involved in the process, etc. Again, this is what's going to build a strong union. This is what's going to have us be a strong union, right? And be ready to negotiate for the best contract possible, is if there's a good, sizable, active group here kind of engaging everyone else. All right, let's talk a little bit about interim stewards. And this is something where kind of moving, this is a kind of proposal we have and the way we're going to move forward in order to kind of make our work more efficient and manageable. So interim, we're essentially the role of the interim steward, which there's none of them yet, right? This is, again, something new. The role of the interim steward is going to be to assume responsibility for about 10 graduate workers in your department, right? And essentially what you would be doing is you'd be engaging those 10 graduate workers in the union, right? Communicating with them about upcoming events. So for instance, we have this town hall, right? Interim stewards would have their 10 people, right, that they would text, call, right, email, in order to kind of let them know about what's happening, see if they have any questions, again, get them involved. They'll be educating others about the union, right, answering questions about the union, right, and in the coming weeks, as we are getting ready for bargaining, they'll be ensuring that those folks have completed the bargaining survey, right, and encourage involvement during contract negotiations. So this is, again, the goal here is to have 1 per 10 graduate workers in each department be a steward, right? And this is to make it, really manageable, right? Really efficient. If you're in the biology department, right? We have lots of union members in the biology department, right? I think over 80 or something. So, it would be really hard for 1 person in that department to, engage everyone, right? Answer everyone's questions and stuff. So the idea is, we would have ideally 8 interim stewards in there. And then, you're just responsible for, your 10 union members who you're trying to engage, kind of, again, updating them about things that are coming up, seeing if they have any questions, making sure they took the bargaining survey and made their voice heard. So it's not going to be, a ton of work or anything. And this is, again, a way for us to make our work more efficient, but also, again, to build a strong union in which everyone has their voice heard. And again, that's what's going to help us win a strong contract. You're not going to be kind of left on your own, right? If you're an interim steward. We have there's several resources you're going to have that are going to be available to you. First, there's going to be a stewards training in the coming weeks. There's no date yet, but we will get info about that soon, where you'll be given lots of resources about how to talk to your colleagues about the union, how to answer basic questions about the union, and things such as that. And we're also, of course, we have a weekly organizing committee meeting now on Fridays at 4. And this would be another resources for stewards, right, and organizing committee members. And it gives you a chance to just come to a meeting, right? You have a space to kind of find out about what's going on, what needs to be communicated to others, right? And then you can just hear about all that and kind of share it with others. Also hear about their kind of successes or challenges that others have kind of gone through to kind of help you as you try to engage your members. And then we also have a membership subcommittee, the membership subcommittee. I'll say a little bit more about it later, but essentially where the membership committee is kind of organizing the training and is a resource for stewards if they have any questions. And so if there's going to be questions you don't have an answer to, but you'll always have someone to kind of ask and check in with. Stewards, as Joe was mentioning earlier, you're going to nominate stewards in your department via the bargaining survey, right? At the end of the bargaining survey, there's an option to nominate yourself or nominate someone in your department. And then your department will vote on those stewards. We'll have more info about how the election, the kind of voting process is going to work in the coming weeks. But you'll nominate yourself or nominate others in your department to take the role of interim steward at the end of the bargaining survey. So make sure you fill that out and make sure you nominate yourself or nominate someone else. Again, this is the kind of crux of our organization moving forward. All right. And now I have another little graphic here, right? Just to kind of tell you all a little bit about kind of different things that we're working on as well, and different things that you, different ways in which you can get involved. So interim stewards are just like one part of this, right? There's all this other kind of work that needs to get done, right? And all this other work that we're doing in order to, win a good contract. So this top group here, this really large group, right? This kind of represents our organizing committee. And then here's our interim stewards. And then the little groups here are some subcommittees who are tasked with working on different things. So if you're not interested in being like an interim steward, you still want to be involved, right? There's ways to do that, and there's going to be lots of people involved who aren't stewards, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and list a few of our subcommittees, so you kind of get a sense of what you can join. And I believe there's a way for you to express interest in joining a subcommittee on the sign-in sheet. But so we have our Action and Events Committee, right? That's the committee that that organized this town hall, right? Bargaining Committee, which you already heard about. This will be elected, hasn't happened yet. Solidarity Committee, which is dedicated to establishing relationships with community groups, local unions, and other unions. The Communications Committee is tasked with social media and kind of media presence, the newsletter that goes out. Membership Committee, which is tasked with kind of ensuring, again, an active membership, right? And providing stewards with the resources they need to kind of engage their members. We have an International Student Committee, which is tasked with kind of engaging international students and also making sure that international students' concerns are heard and a central part of the process. There's a couple that aren't listed here, but that's the Research Committee, which designed the bargaining survey for us. And there's the Political Action Committee, which is dedicated to establishing relationships with elected officials, right? To put pressure or to kind of stand with us, right? And call on UNM to recognize the union. So again, this isn't to be overwhelming, right? The kind of big picture idea here is that this whole thing is the organizing committee, right? All of us are the organizing committee. And then these are just different ways in which you could tap in, and these are ways in which we can make our work efficient, right? And you could decide, the little bit that you want to contribute to the effort, right? Again, what's going to make us feel like a broken record? Sorry, I'm saying it so much, but yeah, we're going to win a good contract if there's a lot of us doing what we can. So this is just a way for us to kind of do that efficiently. So I hope you'll think about how you want to kind of get involved, right? What you want to contribute. And yeah, we're looking forward to working together and fighting for each other and winning a strong union contract that gives graduate workers what they deserve as the workers who make this university run.